keep secret. You think you're going to think about that when you're 4? You can't even think about that when you're 30. So it's like stuck in, as an experience of terror. It's stuck there. And then maybe, you're 25 or 26 and you're kind of plagued by this. You got to go back and you got to think, okay, it's a terrible thing, because you need to develop a philosophy of evil to deal with something like that. It's like people are malevolent.
Right.
And so are you. And that's a rough thing to learn, but you better learn it, because you'll be able to orient yourself in the world properly then, even though it's terrifying. So,
is there a way for people with trauma like that a lot of people can't afford a therapist? It's a luxury.
Yep.
Is it possible for people to work through these things on their own?
Oh, well, this system that I told you about, the future authoring program, is part of a package. We built this, I'm talking about this because we built this thing precisely for that reason, because we were thinking, my partner is a professor at McGill University and a former student of mine who has an engineering degree from MIT and a PhD from Harvard. We've been working on this stuff a long time. So there's a past authoring program that's part of this. And so what it does is ask you to break your life up into 6 periods, epochs, and then to write out the most powerful emotional experiences that you had during those times, positive or negative. And then if they're negative, to do a causal analysis. It's like, okay, you had this bad experience. You're still carrying some weight from that. Why did it happen? Well, I was 4, I was little, the 6-year-olds were beating me up. It's like, okay, you're not 4 anymore. The 6-year-olds aren't around after you. It's probably not relevant anymore. Because it'll ask you that too. You can do an awful lot by writing down what happened to you and thinking it through. And it's inexpensive, right? The program is nominally, it has a nominal price fundamentally. And so there's good evidence that doing that kind of writing can free you up. And it's partly because like let's say your uncle molests you. Okay, what does that mean? Exactly. What does it signify about the nature of humanity and about the nature of the world? Well, it's something unspeakably terrible. So you don't speak of it. And so it's everything. It's horror, like it's unspeakable horror. Then you write about it. It's like, well, I'm no longer a little kid. Okay, it's not that. I'm no longer defenseless. It's not that. Well, people can be malevolent, but everyone isn't that way. It's not that. And you trim it down until it's still awful, right? It's still a bitter poison pill, but it's little and pointed instead of huge and amorphous. And you may find that you can tolerate that, because people are pretty damn tough, but you can't tolerate it in its amorphous form. So you specify and analyze and do a causal, and the analysis is a causal analysis. And then that'll free you up. It'll free you up from that. Because your brain wants to know, you fell in a hole once. That wasn't good. Do you know how to walk around that hole now? And if the answer is yes, then the anxiety system says, no problem. The hole's still there, but you know how to walk around it, man. You don't have to worry about the hole anymore. So, and writing about your past can really help with that. And I would also say with that program, you do a bad job. You sketch it out. You do it over multiple days. And you take, because it also helps to sleep in between.
Is this hitting just me, or is that hitting you? Hi, I'm tree climbing and liquor enthusiast Coach Kahlua. I'm coming down now. Why sit in the smoke chair when you can just add Kahlua and forge some new bonds with your buds?
Periods of writing, because it helps you consolidate what you're learning, because your brain has to reorganize as you read. And so I'll tell you a story about this. So I had a client once, and she came in, and she had been sexually abused by her older brother. And she told me this story, and I had a vision in my imagination of what this was. I thought of her as like 6, 7 years old, something like that. Her older brother being like 16 or 17, and the whole horror show. And I said, well, how old were you? And she said, well, I was 4. I said, okay, how old was your brother? 6. And I thought, she was about 29, and I said, okay, look, we're gonna take this memory apart a little bit. It's like I told her how I imagined her story when she first told it to me. I said, look, like, I thought of you as being this little creature who was menaced by, like, an adolescent, an adult, and so you were powerless, completely powerless, and the adult had intent. But what you're telling me is a story of 2 very badly supervised children I said, when was the last time you saw a 6-year-old? She said, oh, I know what 6-year-olds are like. Okay, think about that. Well, okay, so she walked in as the abuse victim of her older brother. And she walked out knowing that her brother and her were very badly supervised as children. It's funny because you think, well, the past is fixed, it's over. It's like, yes, and she told me in the session, you know, that was a much more tolerable memory. It made it, it put it into perspective. And it also took her out of the victim. She was no longer, you know, towering. And a 6-year-old's a lot bigger than a 4-year-old, make no mistake about it. But a 6-year-old is like, they're 6, you know.
They're relatively blameless.
Yes, there's that. Well, yeah, they should be supervised. I mean, a 6-year-old can be mean, but if they're engaging in sexual behavior, like, you got to think that there's a little bit lacking in terms of parental supervision. You know, I mean, they'll play doctor and all that, but you kind of got to keep an eye on your kids.
Yeah. Do you, with your training, do you just see mental illness everywhere? Do you just can you help just diagnosing people when you're walking around, listening, getting to know people? Like, well, how is the world through your lens?
Do you have like an X-ray vision?
Well, I would say that the world's a miraculous place from my perspective. And here's why. It is almost impossible to find anyone who okay, so imagine here are the 3 conditions. You've got a mental illness, you have a physical illness, or someone who's close to you has a mental illness or a physical illness. It's like the probability that that's true of you right now is very high. And if it isn't true of you right now, in the next 10 years, it's virtually certain. And so I see damaged people walking around everywhere. And the ones that aren't damaged live with damaged people, you know. But they go to work, they do their job. Some of them do heroic things. They work in palliative care wards, they work in emergency wards, they work in funeral parlors, you know, and they go to their damn job despite the fact that they're carrying these heavy weights. And so I don't see so much like mental illness everywhere as a miracle that all of this ever works, because people have it rough, man. You know, and let me tell you a story. This is a cool story. This just blew me away. So I had this client years ago, and she in this hospital called the Douglas Hospital, a very big psychiatric hospital, as big as a university, and it was back before the invention of the hospital was established before the invention of drugs to cure or to control schizophrenia and so on. There were people left in the Douglas Hospital that I was there that couldn't have been deinstitutionalized, and there were tunnels underneath the hospital linking the buildings together. And I took my brother, who wasn't familiar with this sort of thing, down into those tunnels one day, and I don't think he ever forgot it. It was like those people were so ruined. They were like photographs by Diane Arbus or by she photographed dwarves and all sorts of strange people for years, or something by Hieronymus Bosch. Like, it was really extreme. He was really shocked. Anyways, this client came to the hospital from time to time, and she looked like a street person, and she was so shy that she couldn't come up to you without going like this. She was bowing over with her eyes covered as if there was light emanating from you, and she couldn't tolerate it. And we were trying to get her to not act like that, because people found it strange, and obviously it made it difficult for her to have any sort of normal human relationships. But that isn't why she came for therapy. So, okay, so I got to know her a little bit, and I was trying to teach her how to not be, you know, to stand up a bit and learn how to look people in the eyes and so on. But she didn't have much patience for that. And she told me a little bit about her life. She wasn't very bright, and she wasn't very attractive, and she wasn't very educated, and she wasn't very rich. She had it rough, but it was worse than that. Her aunt was dying at home, and she had an alcoholic, schizophrenic boyfriend who was always, like, scaring her to death with tales about the devil. It's like, she had a rough life, man. So, and then she told me why she had actually come, and she had been in the Douglas Hospital.
Would you like to help me?
Yeah, let me finish this game. Did you get my message?
I'm not sure.
I was gonna ask you if you were busy. Did you want to watch the video? Something funny as shit.
How long is it?
Yeah, I'll make it really quick. Give me a few minutes to finish this. I'll come get you.
Worse off than me, and we could go for a walk with the dog. And so she was trying to find someone in the hospital who would listen who would allow her permission to bring one of these inpatients out and walk them around with her dog. When she told me that story, I just about fell over. It's like what do you say about something like that? You know, she had it rough, man. And she still was able to look outside herself and find someone who was worse, and then try to think of something good to do for them, and then to put a fair bit of effort, especially given that she was so damn shy she couldn't even look at you. She would go to the hospital to try to find permission. Man, it just blew me away, you know. So, you know, that's partly when I learned that there wasn't much of a relationship between ethics and intelligence, and you never know when you're seeing a good person. Like, you just don't know. It was a very, very affecting experience. So that's kind of what I see when I look out at the world, and this is also why I don't like the political polarization now, because especially at the moment, especially on the radical left, because those people, they strike me as so ungrateful. It's like they don't understand that the world isn't being run by mighty tyrants who rule the patriarchy, but mostly by people who, like I've dealt with very high achieving people in my life.